What's up, Browns fans? Spencer German coming to you live from Berea at the Browns facility, where round one of the NFL draft is come and gone. We set the stage for round two on Friday. We'll have plenty to get to on that front. But in the meantime, Megs, we have a couple of picks to react to. And after months of speculation about what the Browns are going to do with two first-round picks, particularly with their first one at number 6 overall, I do take some pride a little bit here, Megs, in being right about the fact that they were going to trade back and that they were going to go tackle first. Everybody thought wide receiver, Carnell Tate, they got to go wide receiver. They'll trade, even if they trade back, they should go wide receiver. And I was very, very spot on with the fact that I felt they were going to trade back and that the finishing off this offensive line would be the priority, because that's what they prioritized this entire offseason. And so that played out. They trade back from 6 with the Kansas City Chiefs. They add a couple picks in the process. Number 74 overall, number 148 overall, and obviously they get the 9th pick. And then at 9, Andrew Berry did say they got some calls on that pick as well, but they stood pat, and they ultimately took Spencer Fano, tackle out of Utah, who they made very clear will be their left tackle coming up immediately as a rookie this year. Then draft continues playing out. They get to pick 24, the pick they obviously got from the Jaguars last year in that draft night trade, and they take Casey Concepcion, and the Browns did the thing that we weren't sure they were going to do, which is, hey, we got these two needs. Let's fill them here on night one. Megs, we'll get into the players specifically themselves, but I know, especially from your corner of things, you really were banging the drum for a receiver, banging the drum for Carnell Tate, specifically at 6. The Titans kind of took that out of the equation. He wasn't even available at 6, but understanding where your head was at with this and what you wanted them to do, how did you ultimately feel as you kind of reflect here on night one?
Jerm, let's give you some more credit too, because on our pre-draft show the other night, you had called that you felt like they're going to get Casey Concepcion with their second pick of the draft. So it's like, hey, you were kind of all over it, and that's why we pay you the big bucks, right? That's why you are on site all time. That's why you're the man. No, I I was talking with Dylan, who was on our last show earlier tonight, and it's like, okay, for me, like I very loudly banged the drum for Carnell Tate, and I really wanted him to be the pick at number 6. Thankfully, there was no option for that. He goes at pick number 4, which I thought the first 4 picks were very, very fascinating. David Bailey obviously goes 2. The draft pretty much started at pick 2, but David Bailey goes 2. And then Jeremiah Love. Dude, then Jeremiah Love goes at pick 3, and it's like that was a shocker. And then Carnell Tate was the first Ohio State Buckeye off the board. As I cover Ohio State for a roundtable, I've done 200 mock drafts. Not one of them had Carnell Tate being the first Ohio State Buckeye off the board. And he was the one that went off the board there at number 4. So at that point, Jerm, and I know afterwards you guys talked to Andrew Berry and even Coach Munkin, and it was always the plan to go tackle, like it always was. But at least Carnell wasn't on the board there to have that decision. And because we know how the discourse would work, I know how my mind would work. Be like, hey, we chose to trade back when Carnell Tate was on the board, and I would have hated that, but wasn't there. You trade back to number 9, and you get Spencer Fano, and it's like, this dude, as I've learned about him more and more and more over the past 3 hours, holy man, like this is the most athletic tackle you could have got your hands on. And in many cases, you got the best tackle. A lot of people viewed him as the best tackle. They get him there at 9 and acquire 2 picks in doing so. Take a little bit of a risk there by trading back 3 spots, but you get the job done. You do what you need to do. I think that move to start everything for the Browns was awesome. And that was an incredible way to kind of get things going and kicked off there for Cleveland's draft.
Yeah, you mentioned the risk of it. Andrew Berry was kind of asked about that afterwards, and he had an interesting comment about how that is kind of the risk that you take. But he mentioned that they knew at 6 there was essentially 3 guys that they liked at that spot, and that they kind of had a sense of who Kansas City was trading up for, and so they knew that at least one of those guys was going to be there at 9 after that. And so kind of understanding how the board was falling and who Kansas City was coming up for, they felt like they knew they could still get somebody that they really, really wanted at 9. And honestly, along those lines, Megs, like I was convinced that they were taking Caleb Downs both at 6.
Convinced. Yes.
And at 9, because he fell all the way to 11. The Cowboys got him there. They traded up 1 spot to get him. which is fitting because he'd been linked to the Cowboys for pretty much this entire pre-draft process. But I was convinced, and when Barry said those comments afterwards that like we liked 3 players there, one of them being obviously Fano, I was convinced that one of them was Caleb Downs, and I was kind of shocked that ultimately they went with Fano over Downs. And this is where the conversation on like need versus best player available I think is interesting. Now Barry said Fano was always one of their highest graded guys. They really liked him from the start. He was their highest graded tackle, whatever. But I think for a lot of people, Downs was considered one of those blue chip players. And so I'd be curious to know like where he kind of was in that order, because and maybe that's where need maybe trumps or supersedes when you're trying to make that pick and there's a couple guys that you like at a certain spot. Maybe that's where need then takes precedent, where you're like, well, we like these guys pretty similarly. This one's a need. This one's lesser of a need. Let's take the tackle. But I thought those comments were kind of interesting. But yes, the consensus we got tonight was that Spencer Fano was highly targeted by the Browns from early on in this process. So much so that he was near the top of their board. Todd Monken made that clear. Andrew Berry made that clear. And Fano told us himself that he drove from Indy after the NFL Combine and came to Cleveland for his top 30 visit like that week. So it seems like it's pretty – just connecting the dots here, like this was essentially from an organization standpoint like a match made in heaven. Like this is the guy they really wanted for that tackle spot. He will play left tackle, and the Browns made sure first and foremost to finish off this offensive line that they had spent so much time revamping throughout the offseason already.
Yeah, and Germ, I think too, like when you look at Fano and all of the stuff that's coming out with him, and really his biggest concern is right. He's played right tackle primarily at Utah, but he has some experience playing left tackle. But one of the best parts about the Todd Monken regime and this new kind of era of Cleveland Browns football, they literally came out. The first question Todd was asked was like, "Where's he going to play?" And he's like, "Left tackle." And Andrew even was like, "Yeah, we're parking him at left tackle, and he's going over there." There's no confusion. There's no smoke screens. There's no nothing. They drafted him to be the left tackle tomorrow. They drafted him to be the left tackle of the future. And he seems so excited about it. Like that's always like the cool stuff when, you get these players getting their phone calls and hanging out with their families. Like that stuff is awesome. And they just go nuts. And hearing the story of him driving from Indy to Cleveland, all that stuff, I thought was super cool. And you're right. I think match made in heaven sounds about right. And for me, Germ, like, the trade back, like I want to ask you about your perspective on Kansas City's position, because it's like, man, it felt like they didn't need to trade up. It felt like they didn't need to trade up to do that, but Cleveland gets two additional picks out of that trade, and it's like, man, I'm not going to use the word fleece, but it's like, hey, that's pretty valuable for Cleveland to get a third and a fifth, and just to fall back to spot.
We can talk about the parameters of the trade here in a second. One other thing with Fano. You kind of said one of the biggest concerns with him was that he was a right tackle, not a left tackle. He did have the experience at left tackle his freshman year at Utah, and he said on the conference call tonight that like he went to right tackle in the bowl game his freshman year and then stayed there because Lomu, I think, had like redshirted and then was going to play that next year, and he kind of made it sound like it was like a what's best for the team type thing. So you're already getting a guy that's willing to do whatever he needs to for his team, but he certainly knows how to play left tackle from his freshman year. He isn't worried about whatever side he plays on. He made that clear throughout the pre-draft process. I honestly think the bigger concern with him throughout this entire experience has been the arm length. Everyone's brought up the arm length. It's been the highlight of, well, hey, can you take this guy? Do you trust this guy? That and his hand size in terms of like being able to grab guys and sort of hold your own at the tackle spot. And I thought it was interesting. Like Andrew Berry got a little nitty gritty sort of talking tackles, and he was asked about the arm length thing. And he flat out said, like, usually when a tackle struggles, it's not because of their arm length. It's because of their anchor not being consistent, their footwork not being very good, or they're having a lack of, like, awareness of things that are kind of going on around them, and they're just not worried about that with him. But here's the thing. Clearly what trumped the arm length for them was the athleticism, which at the Combine, that was raved about. Like, his workout at the Combine, you could tell he had quick feet. He could get out. He was moving the 40 time. So there's a lot of good there in terms of the athleticism piece of this. And I'm sure that clearly that trumped for them needing to needing to hang too much onto the arm length thing, and they're not worried about it. So we'll see if they're proven right in that. I've liked Fano for a while in this class. Monroe Frizzing was probably my favorite tackle in the group, and I like the upside that he brought to the table because he had less starts. But at one point during this process, we might have even talked about it, Megs. Like, I felt like Fano was a guy that was very much in play for them and could kind of end up being like the lesser of two evils between like taking Caden Proctor too early or taking Maui Noah, who I'm worried about having to play guard and played right tackle his entire career. So I wasn't really sure about him either. But this kind of felt like maybe the middle ground on that, and I wondered if they'd have some interest in him. As it turns out, he was their favorite guy.
And for the right reasons too. And I think back to what Andrew Berry has said in the past about the tackle position and how he views it as like, hey, right tackle is just as important as left tackle, and like you got to be able to play both. And now you look at I want to rewind. Let's call it 3 months, Germ, like when they basically blew up the offensive line and was like, hey, we got to rebuild this thing from scratch. And now you've kind of rebuilt it. And the hope here is that Latmu is Fano is, it's very unique that they're both kind of similar names and like both of those guys. But Spencer Fano gets, he comes here and he's going to be the left tackle of the future, right? And he even talked about in that post draft press conference, he talked about how he wants to learn from Joe Thomas and how he studied Joe Thomas and wants to be Joe Thomas. And everyone's kind of yearning for that, as they become the many tackles that we've drafted now. But no, I just think that pick it's growing. It grew on me quickly. It makes a ton of sense. It solves a need. And frankly, Jerm, when you talk about, hey, they trade back and your instinct was, hey, they should go Caleb Downs. I'm actually happy that they went with best player available at the position of need, right? Like that's who they identified was their best player available. And they didn't just say, hey, this is the best guy on the board. We need this position. We need tackle. We need wide receiver. They didn't reach for a receiver. They got the tackle probably at actually lower than probably what he should have gone. And you got to feel really good about that. I actually love the pick. Like I absolutely love the process of the pick, everything they did to get to it, and the result that they're coming away with it with.
Yeah, no, I listen. We'll obviously we'll have time to evaluate like how this move goes and all those things. And it is in some respects another tackle that the Browns are bringing in who they're trying to make the switch with from right tackle to left tackle. And we know what happened the first time Barry did this. But if their evaluation pointed them to Fano, I can respect the fact that was their guy. And they went with their guy, and they addressed their one of their biggest needs. You mentioned the trade piece of this, and we'll get to Casey Concepcion because I think that's probably the sexier of the picks tonight that people certainly want to talk about. He's a wide receiver, rightfully so. By the way, I love that Megs, former quarterback, has come around on, hey, protection matters. We need tackles. I want to be able to throw the football.
Receivers. We need receivers.
But on the trade piece, Megs, I think in a draft where you had 7 tackles taken in this first round, and the Browns actually took the first one off the board, by the way, and in doing so, you traded back and added pick 74, pick 148, and you only had to move back 3 spots and still got your guy. Like that is a as masterclass as you can get when it comes to executing your draft strategy or your draft plan. We all kind of felt like trading back was in the cards. We didn't know how it would end necessarily, with what player would end up with, but to still, as far as they're telling us, get their guy and then add the draft capital they added. Like I think well, again, we're going to get to Casey Concepcion, and I have some certain feelings on him. We'll see how you feel as well. But like in general, tonight was a slam dunk for the Browns in terms of the what they added and in addressing the 2 biggest holes that we obviously know about on this roster, with players that obviously have some really, really high potential. And Megs, we talked about this early in the process, right? Like it was about using premium picks on offensive players. And they did that tonight while also adding this draft capital. I think they knocked the trade back out of the park, personally.
Spence, I was really concerned about the trade back piece of this because, when we were talking, we've mocked it up 100 times. You get back to 12 or 13 and you're like, okay, we can live there. We saw a couple this morning, there's a couple mock drafts this morning that had the Browns trade back to 20, 22. And it's like, whoa. Back this thing up. Like you got to stay in the range of making, legitimate picks of premium players.
It also makes, real quick, sorry to interrupt, like, especially in a draft where you have people like Eric DeCosta saying only half the first round is even worth first round picks. Like you didn't want to trade back that far. I agree with you 100%.
Exactly. And that trade pops up and it's like, I remember the first text I got was Browns are trading, and it was like, uh-oh. And then it was like, Browns are trading to 9. And it's like, whoa, okay. Browns get 2 picks to trade to 9. And you're like, yeah, sign me up. Like, where's the dotted line? Like, yeah, I'm signing that thing up. And, you obviously want to nail that 3rd round pick for sure, obviously, and the 5th round pick. But you get 2 more swings at the plate, and you're getting a guy. And, Andrew even said, like, yeah, we were going to take him at 6 until we found the trade. Like, we were going to take him at 6 regardless. Like, that was what the pick was going to be at 6. So the pick was going to be at 9. And they did that. They add 2 pieces. I think, like you said, slam dunk, masterclass, all the things. I think that's right.
So now we move to the second pick the Browns made tonight, Casey Concepcion. And Megs, you are right. In our conversation that we did for our sort of final mock draft that we put together over at Browns Roundtable, I mentioned, our guy Dylan Feltovich. Shout out to Dylan, who was we were texting with in our group chat tonight. He had Concepcion as the pick at 24, and I kind of pushed back on it a little bit. But I did sort of end that conversation by saying, for some reason I got a feeling that's going to be the guy that they target, and some of it probably is. Somebody brought up in the media room tonight, like, there's some Zay Flowers in him, and maybe that's part of it. Like, he's got that run after catch. He's got that ability to just kind of get open on different areas of the field and make plays with the ball in his hands. And that's clearly what the Browns prioritized here. The big problem I had was the ball has to get into his hands. And there was a lot said about the drop rate, obviously, in college. There was a couple stats that I kept kind of pointing to. He had a drop rate over 9 this past season, a career catch rate of just 63.5, and a contested catch rate of 45.5. And so that was between both stops at NC State and Texas A&M for those latter 2 numbers. And so, like, there are some concerns there in a group that had issues holding on to the football last year. And we can get into that, and we can discuss, like, how we feel about that piece of this. But I think overall, like, the Browns saw a player, and this is what stands out on tape. He's a guy that gets open in different areas of the field, and when the ball is in his hands, yes, he is a great player who makes really big plays. And Andrew Berry described it as electric. I think that's a really good word for it. He gets the ball, and he's an electric player with the ball in his hands. So that clearly trumped the drop stuff to them. And it's another one of those, like, all right, well, let's see if it works out. But the big thing here is that they obviously addressed their other biggest need.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that just scares me, and I said it in our show the other day, it's the drops. It's truly the drops. And I think there was a comment said, and I have a lot of numbers and quotes going through my brain right now, but there was a comment at some point somewhere that was said about his drops they were more so a focus thing and not like a skill thing. And it was like, hey, just looking the ball in type of a deal. And it's like, okay, that's stuff that can be addressed. But drops, in my opinion, they're part of you, right? If you're a drop guy, you're a drop guy. If you're a catch guy, you're a catch guy. And like, and I it's kind of in jest there, but like, it's,
if you're an ass guy, you're an ass guy. If you're not,
yeah, right. Exactly. But it's kind of, it's true though. It's like, all right, you look at, we're just going to use Carnell Tate just because I've talked a lot about Carnell Tate. Like, his contested catch was like 80%, right? So it's like, all right, every time he's going up, with a guy within 5 yards of him, he's coming down with that ball 8 out of 10 times. And you look at Concepcion, and that's 60%. And the drop thing is a big deal. Now, if they think they can train that out of him, awesome. I'll buy that for the next 2-3 years. I don't like the way I feel about the pick. And I told you, and I was curious about how I would feel about this because you called it on Thursday night or Wednesday night when we recorded, or Tuesday, whatever it was. And I was like, hey, we're going to sit here at this very moment, and I'm going to have to respond because you were like, yeah, they're picking Casey Concepcion. That's going to be the way it is. And I was like, no. But now here we are. And it's like, okay, at 24, I think that what I was nervous about was a trade back to 13, and then you're settling for whatever tackle is available, and then you're settling for whatever wide receiver is available. And in both situations, you leverage yourself and you say, hey, we're going to grab another pick and take the lesser of what we need. They got their best tackle, so I can be ecstatic about that. And now they got a guy at receiver that I can be, okay, I'm excited about or happy about, but also skeptical. And he's got to prove it, right? He has to prove it. Like the drop thing, it can't happen. Like we can't be on 3rd and 7 and we throw it to Casey Concepcion and he drops it, right? That can't happen, So like that's going to be part of it. But ultimately, like value wise, awesome. This guy, it sounds like you guys talk to him. Sounds like he's got just like a heart that's a heart of a lion, and he's just going to work his tail off, and he wants to be here, and all those things are so important. So I'm excited about it. The national response to it actually, Germ, has been like very positive. Like just like scrolling and seeing stuff, like a lot of people are like, "Yep, good pick." Like, and he'll have the opportunity to prove it. It's not one that jumps off the page tonight. And that's fine, right? He's got next year and the year after to prove that, hey, the 2026 NFL draft was a good one for the Browns. But, time will tell that story. But, yeah, I think that, the upside's there and the opportunity's there for him to be great. I'm okay. I'm good with the pick. Not ecstatic about it, but I'm good with it.
Yeah, listen, I think anybody is right or correct in being maybe a little bit concerned about that piece of his game. And if that's how you feel, I can buy that. I can accept that. I'm a little bit nervous about that. I think the beauty of the draft, though, too, is that in a way, it kind of is a clean slate, right? Like you go from maybe the drops to find him in college. Guess what? They don't have to define him at the NFL level.
Yeah.
He could, if it's something that's more of a concentration thing, like what you talked about, then maybe that's something they can work on fixing his game. And then it isn't an issue at the next level for the Cleveland Browns. Like when I watch the tape, I do see a player that if the catch is completed, hell yeah. Like he makes some plays, man. And again, that's what the Browns prioritized. That's what the Browns wanted in an offense that just lacks skill position players, in an offense that just lacks weapons in general, especially at that position. Seeing what he kind of brings to the table, is something that fans should be excited about. But I do understand having some hesitancy. It's going to be up to him to prove that. I think the beauty of that too, though, is along the lines of what you mentioned. He said on the conference call tonight to get your popcorn ready. He said, I can run every route. I'm versatile. I can do anything the team asked me to do. And that he also added at one point, and he said the go-to line that a lot of guys say is like, I'm a dog. And on the heels of, he wrote that letter to GMs this week in the Players Tribune. And on the heel where he said, like, I'm the best receiver in this draft, on the heels of that, I love the confidence. I love the fact that he's coming in here ready to prove that whatever people said about him from college isn't going to deter him. And I do think that in Tom Monken's offense, he has a chance to be successful. If they can fix that part of his game and get the ball in his hands to make plays, then yes, I see the potential that's there. It's up to him to disprove that, but it seems like he's adamant he's going to. And honestly, that mentality is the exact type of thing that Browns fans love. Like he should endear himself to Browns fans very quickly.
In German, it's not only what Browns fans love, it's what this Browns team needs, and it's going to be the personality of the coach, right? You've gotten to speak to Todd Monken a couple times. Like, does that not feel like when he was talking and you hear him say it, he's like, I'm going to be a dog, I'm going to do all these things. Did it not feel like Todd Monken was like, all right, yeah, like this is the guy. Like you can imagine him saying that type of stuff to Monken and being like, yeah, get him on my roster. I want him. He's going to be a guy on this team and we're going to give him the football. And like the other part too, the Zay Flowers part of this thing, like people were talked about it. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. I was just writing a story about this, and Zay had 1,200 yards receiving last year. He only had 5 touchdowns, but he had 1,200 yards receiving on 80 catches. And it's like, yeah, if that's what you get in year 3 or in year 2, if you get 900 yards next year, this is a good draft pick. Like if you get 800 yards, it's a good draft pick. And then if he becomes a receiver that you can rely on, even if it is throws at the line of scrimmage, you just give him the ball in his hands and he can go make plays. Fine. I don't care. Sign me up. Let's go. I think he adds that little bit of versatility to the game. And, that the mentality part of it is I think what I'm most excited for, Germ, is like, yeah, get him in this building, get him in this town, get him on that field wearing the orange helmet, and let's see what he can do. Because I think, like you said, he's going to endear himself very, very well to this Cleveland Browns fan base.
Final couple of minutes here, Megs. I'm assuming that Carnell Tate is like your biggest disappointment. Like that's the guy you really wanted. You're most disappointed they missed out on Carnell.
Yeah, I'd say I'm disappointed. I'm bummed. I'm bummed, but like we'd be having a much we'd be having a much different conversation if he was there at 6 and we traded back and then took Spencer Fano. Like I would be upset. It's like, all right, he went at 4. He
Yeah.
wasn't available. He wasn't available to us, and now I'm good with what they did. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm bummed out. Sure, I would have loved to have him there. I think I was telling you and Dylan that I was custom printing a jersey, a Carnell Tate jersey for my office. Like, yeah, I was going down that road. I tweeted out his touchdown celebration last year where he threw up the wristband, right? Or he threw up the the watch, the Shador watch. But it's like, hey, he went at 4. He wasn't available to Cleveland. Fine, let's go. Let's go get the next best guy. And
I would say, go ahead. No, I was going to say my biggest disappointment, same position group. After they traded back to 9, I kind of was like, dude, what if they're trying to snag Jordan Tyson right before the Giants try to take him? Because we knew there was a lot of smoke about the Giants liking him.
Yeah.
And my mind went right to like the Tyson brothers together in Cleveland. I wanted it. So that was probably the one disappointing thing for me. I also really thought they were going to take Caleb Downs, and for some reason I kind of come around to that. I was like, if they take Caleb Downs, it'd be awesome to cover him. But I wouldn't say I was disappointed by that because, frankly, I thought they needed to address these 2 needs they did tonight, and they did. So,
and Germ, you know what that sets up? I agree with both of those things. I was thinking Tyson too. I quickly switched the Tate to Tyson on my print jersey that I was going to do. No, but it sets them up tomorrow. You address your 2 biggest needs.
Yeah, I was going to ask that next, Megs. I was going to ask, like,
best player available, dude.
Well, yeah, and I think what's interesting here is, like, I don't know if you want to name anybody that you have your eyes on, but anybody left going into day 2 that you kind of are intrigued by? Because I'll tell you, man, we've been talking a lot about like their next biggest need maybe being like a slot corner, or a safety, and like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is there from Toledo. He's a guy I have my eye on for them tomorrow. Colton Hood, who I had in my mock draft at 39, is still there. Also, if they wanted to double down on wide receiver, Jeremy Bernard from Alabama is still there. So those are some of the guys that I have my eye on. I don't know if you wanted to add anybody else to that list, but they are set up perfectly now to kind of address one of the biggest defensive needs because there's a lot of corners still on the board going into day 2. And I think that sets up well for them as well. I agree.
I have a list here from Ari Mirov over on Twitter. Jermon McCoy, Denzel Boston, EMW, Manuel McKeel-Warren, Colton Hood, you've already talked about. Avian Terrell, right? We've talked about Terrell. I mean, how many times did we mock Terrell in the, well into the first round? A couple guards, Emmanuel Pregnon, like if they want to go interior, he's from Oregon, one of the best interior offensive linemen in the class. Caden McDonald, defensive tackle, Jacob Rodriguez at linebacker, TJ Parker. Hey, D'Angelo Pons is still there. You're going to get a player at 39. And
I believe Cassius Howe. I think Cassius Howe is still there. If they wanted to go,
I have Cassius Howe still there. Yes, Jeremy Bernard also still there.
Or Zion Young if they want to go defensive end. Which, by the way, we know they tried to sign AJ Epinesa and that fell through. I think defensive end is a higher priority than we realize as well.
And Jerm, I honestly think you can hang out. Wait till pick 39, and whoever's there. If the best player there is a corner, take him. Best player's a linebacker, take him. Best player's an edge, take him. Like, just go get the best player that's on your board and just go do that. Like tonight freed them up to do that. And I think, man, I was very anxious about today, about how this was going to go. And for all intents and purposes, like we talked about, I'm bummed about Carnell, bummed about Jordan Tyson. We didn't get the 2 top receivers on the board. You get the top tackle, you get, top of the second tier of wide receivers, and you did it in a really solid way. You acquired 2 more picks in the 3rd round. Yeah, sign me up. I think that was job well done, and you're getting a gold star. In my opinion, for that operation today.
I'll leave Browns fans with this: if you didn't like the draft tonight, which I think people should, I saw this quote apparently from the Steelers tonight, who reportedly were on the phone with Mekhi Lemon, ready to pick him at 21.
Germ, not reportedly. Mekhi Lemon said that. He was talking to the Steelers. And the Eagles called him. Yes.
So the Eagles jumped the Steelers to get Mekhi Lemon, pretty much solidifying that they're going to trade A.J. Brown. There's a whole scandal associated with that, as we know right now.
What's going on there? What's going on with that?
Now, I will say this is coming from Andrew Filipponi, so take the quote with a grain of salt because sometimes he's a parody account, it seems. But he said that there's
Can we clip that? Can we clip that and send it to him?
But there is a quote from a Steelers insider that he said, "You know when the clock runs out on you in a fantasy draft and it auto picks a guy you don't want? That's what happened to the Steelers tonight." So that's what they're talking about in Pittsburgh right now versus what we're talking about in Cleveland right now, which is a team that drafted and filled their two biggest needs, traded back in the process, still have 9 picks on the weekend, which, by the way, I don't think they're making all 9 picks tonight. I do not think that's – or not tonight, but the rest of the weekend. I think there's going to be some more moving up and down the draft board that happens. We shall see. But I think tonight, resoundingly, no matter how you, depending on how you feel about the players, maybe you feel a little bit differently. But I do think they prioritized the positions that they needed, and they got guys that were graded very highly overall in their respective position groups by most consensusly. And so I think you walk out of here feeling like it was a pretty productive and successful night for the Cleveland Browns as we turn the page and start looking ahead to Friday and, of course, Saturday. If you missed anything, make sure you head on over to Browns Roundtable. There's a QR code above Meg's head. You can scan that. It makes it a little quicker to get over there. We have some written stuff over there. I got the pieces up about the players themselves and the trade back. Also, I'm working on a piece right now that'll go up shortly after we get off with this live show here, talking about some of what Casey Concepcion had to say, including his quote about being a dog and get your popcorn ready. So make sure you check that out as well. And we'll have more for you, obviously, covering this throughout the rest of the weekend. We'll have more conversations like this throughout the rest of the weekend. I know Megs is going to be
I'm out.
Unavailable tomorrow. But I will have Dylan Feltovich, who was on our mock draft show the other night, with me. And then Megs is going to join with Dylan and I as well early next week to do kind of like a full recap of whatever transpires the rest of the weekend. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us, staying up late with us. As always.
We got a good crowd in here, man. We got a nice crowd in here tonight. Let's go.
Yeah, we do have a nice crowd. 100 people so far live in real time. We appreciate you. If you're new to the channel, again, hit that subscribe button. In the meantime, though, get some sleep. We appreciate you. And make sure, as always, when you wake up in the morning, you keep on following along with all things Cleveland Browns with BrownsRoundtable.com.